without even knowing.
Exactly. Have them
Have
say.
it in the inner circle. Just so you think it's going to be a smaller group, and that is nice to get people a little closer and joined us today. And Deb, who is moderating the Q&A, if you were there at this training, will be moderating this session. And it's very casual, it's very informal, but I don't know if you have any ground rules. The way that it's been working
No, I
is just
don't.
talk loud enough so we can all hear, and we really want to make sure everyone has a chance to speak. So just bear that in mind a little, but as long as you'd like to stay, and Arnon can stay with us, and Deb can stay, we're here for you. So.
And if we stay small like this, it could be more of a conversation than it would be necessarily
Absolutely.
just moderated. But I think we'll pick up some other things. So while we're waiting, can we just see if people have something to ask?
Yeah,
Or do you want
sure.
us to not wait?
No.
So my grandparents came to this country in Canada in 1909 or 10. And they obviously, they came because of pogroms and what have you. But they wouldn't answer questions. And I was a really curious little girl trying to get through the Yiddish accent. And they would tell me nothing, all of them. And I just wonder if this is a more universal reaction to people who were displaced against their will, if it has some undertones of that, in addition to the Holocaust and all the horror. But my second real question, how did you get Etta to agree to be filmed for all those years and months? And it's very curious to me that she seemed willing to do this.
I start from the second one. The first one is really, I think it's really a big issue. But I would tell it like that. I was also I didn't understand everything with her till today. I don't know everything about her. I could only guess. And being I wanted to make the film. Of course, when I first visited her, I didn't realize how important she would be for the film. Of course, without her, the film would be completely something different. So, as well as when I first visited her, I think that she, especially she and my mother, and also of course my grandparents, and maybe all human beings, sometimes or many times made the choices unconsciously. And I think somehow, well, that's what I'm saying to myself, somehow, unconsciously, she really wants me to be there. And she really wants me to tell this story. And she really wants, it's a real burden on your shoulder to have a father like this. And I'm sure that I'm not the first. I'm sure, well, not through my belief, but through all kind of researches, that I was not the first one that knocked on her door, She couldn't, as I mentioning in my film, I said, how can it be that Eichmann, okay, nobody heard about it, but he was mentioning the Eichmann trial. You've seen it on TV. The scene that I put on the film is from the German TV, and from time to time, of course, somebody mentioned that. But so I think that I'm not the first one. Maybe I'm the first one that told her what happened with him afterwards. But I think that somehow, first of all, unconsciously, she wanted, but the other explanation, which is much more simple, and she really considered me, as I understood, as the relative of the best friends of her parents. She welcomed me. That's true. She welcomed me like this, and also when you're thinking about her father, his best alibi was that he has Jewish friends. That's his best alibi. So again, somehow it's an alibi for her. Here is the grandson. He's coming. Because in the film you see just excerpt of what was filming and what was going on, but we were really spending nice time together. It's true. They are very nice people, and for me it was harder. You know, if they were not nice people, you know, it was just confusing. It was easier to tell them. But she was really, and her husband, they're really, you know, they're nice people. Really.
They came across very nice.
Yeah.
Did she ever talk about her father as what kind of person he was with her?
Well, first of all, she was the only child of a very, I think, charismatic person. He was traveling around the world, had a lot of stories. I spoke with her about her childhood and about how she was raised. She was raised because he was not a diplomat, but he was kind of a diplomat. He was really in contact with many, you know, and he was the peer of Coca-Cola in Germany, and he traveled all around the world with that. And he was, you know, his alibi of being journalist is true, because he was writing books, traveling books. He was writing, so he had few careers, and so she spent a lot of time in traveling, and she suffered from that. She didn't like it, you know, the only child. But on the other hand, she really adored her father, and she had trouble with her mother, you know, very natural way.
Right, sure.
Yeah, but he was all the time she spoke with him about him, so very, you know, she really loved him.
Our fathers, our parents are our parents. And
Yeah,
sometimes it's hard
yeah.
to reconcile. And of course, there's the other preference, as some people do, of pretty fiction rather than the truth, and to keep themselves comfortable in that way.
Yes.
Any other thoughts, questions?
Any repercussions with the Coca-Cola company apropos of his position there? I would wonder, you know, did they do anything? Do you know? Remember that movie 1, 2, 3 with Jimmy Cagney?
Yes.
Yeah.
As far as I know, and as far as this guy in the film, Une, the journalist from the Spiegel, told me, they just didn't do nothing. I think that's what I'm asking him. But listen, it's 5 years after the Eichmann trial. It's not, they probably heard about it. But I thought when he's mentioning this biography of that the Coca-Cola, I saw proofs that he was, how to say, he was going to pension. Really like
Retired.
he retired like a normal, you know, worker at the age of 65, and they made a celebration for him. And I saw this very nice brochure, flyer that they got, and of course nothing about the war. And
They mentioned, or you mentioned, it was mentioned in the film that when he celebrated his anniversary at
Yes.
Coca-Cola, or no, I'm sorry, that's not it. When there were some allegations brought forward about him being part of the SS, he decided to just write about it and it was dismissed.
That's what Edda's saying, which is
Yes.
not totally correct.
I was kind of wondering what
Yeah.
was that?
No,
Did you
he
see?
was mentioned. See, for me, for example, I will start it backwards. For me, one of the most astonishing things that I found out is this scene that Edda's coming with me with the newspaper and talking about the trial or the accusation between him and the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail suddenly it was in '58 published this article about the German Nazis that helped Nazi, which everybody knows it happened. So there were many German ex-Nazi scientists. It's a known chapter in history that helped Nazi. So, and what she is saying, and it's true, she's saying the truth, that he heard about it. Maybe I tell a little bit more from one of his connection in England, because it's an English paper, and this guy told him, because he didn't know nothing about his past, you must sue them, and he sued them. He took them to court. This is true. I saw the document. What she is not saying absolutely correct. They didn't go to trial. They settled.
Yeah.
And I saw the arguments, and I couldn't believe it. For example, the lawyer. I saw the letter changing between them. The lawyer from München said, "This man is a very honorable man. He's working in Coca-Cola. You may ask his the people that work with him, under him, or chief boss, and ask them if they think he's a Nazi. He's not a Nazi. Things like that. You can really
So that's the answer.
very, very strong, argument. Yes, things like that. And I think that the Daily Mail just decided it. Sometimes you settle because you can, they didn't want to go to court. But what's more interesting, how this guy got the courage to do it. And I think he didn't know, and I heard this argument from quite few historians, many Nazis believe that many documents didn't survive. Many documents vanished. And they didn't believe, and it happened that, one of the most, recently, or the last few years, many German historians found out that a lot of documents are being captured for years in the KGB, archive in Russia. So they're looking for money to save months, because it's in German. Only German can read it, in the KGB. Because it's known, the Russian came and just took everything and didn't know what, and so I think he didn't believe that there are documents that can prove differently. One of the things I did in the film, this Professor Wild, in the end, I decided to pick only this sentence, but I did another thing. I copied the newspaper, Xerox, the newspaper that Eda gave me, and I made him like a surprise, because I asked him about formula, and then I put him the paper and say, what do you say? It's written he's not a Nazi. So he looked, and this is all documented, and he's very, very, how to say this word, but he's, not just non-historian, you can trust him, yeah? So he looked at the paper, and he looked at me, and he said, what do you want? And I said, yes, it's written, he said he's not a Nazi. So he said, yes, that means he's a liar. And I tell you something, he's not the first Nazi that is a liar.
You mentioned that he was a very charismatic man, and I wonder if he's that kind of person who, in my mind I could see that's one of those people that you kind of, people just trust naturally, or they believe whatever they say naturally, but in truth he's a very compartmentalized person who has shades of himself that are really dark, and just, so it's kind of an interesting question.
I think the man, I'm in America, and no quote in that, I'm afraid, but he was a peer of Coca-Cola.
Right, right.
He was a peer in Goebbels' ministry. That was his job all his life. To sell things,
exactly.
To sell alibis, to sell stories.
Right.
And he's not the only one. This is. Did you see Errol Morris's Fog of War about Robert Wagner? This
Sure.
Our whole history is full of people who essentially do things and then rationalize for what they've done and get protected by the system that they are, sort of at the helm of, and so it's not an unusual thing.
I'm curious as to when you decided, I noticed you had the cameras rolling when you first went in to start cleaning. When did you actually decide to do the film, and did you expect to find something? Because that's not something you normally, film, to me.
Well, he's a filmmaker though, so we
Well,
film everything.
No, but it was, I tell you what happened. I'll take this opportunity and make it a little bit bigger answer, because it's really need to understand what happened. I made a film before that was a feature documentary, and before that I made mainly fiction because I was educated in school and university to make fiction films, and I was found my way. I said, this is something I really want to do. It's a combination, as I see it, of storytelling, but in reality, research, something that I like. But when I made this film, I was very, I was happy with that, etc. But there was an obstacle with that film. And the obstacle was that I worked on this film, the previous film, 4 years. And then afterwards, I traveled and distributed it for another 2 years. So I told myself, you know, you find what you want, but be careful. Each journey is going to take you a lot of time. And when you're making a successful, especially documentary film, people are coming and suggesting you their stories. And I heard amazing stories. And each story I thought, oh, I'm not going to invest in these 4 years. I'm not going to, and I simply didn't make a film for 5 years. I just say, no, 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 no. And then, you know, one might say it even was a writer blocks. Now I can say it. You know, sometimes, you know, just, and then when my grandmother died, my idea was I felt an urge to take the camera and go to the flat, because I knew the place. I knew, you know, as I say in the beginning of the film, and I also knew that it's a world that's going to be vanished. You know, there's a Berlin flat in Tel Aviv, how they live, and I knew my family. I knew they will be quick getting rid of everything. So I decided to take the camera and make a short film, and that will take few days of shooting, and it will be like, yeah. And that
How
was
many years did it take?
5 years, I guess. And one day, while shooting it, it was after 3 months or something like that, I met on the street a woman, a director of a very known foundation in Israel. That in this foundation it's a co-production foundation. They're inviting filmmakers, documentary filmmakers, to pitch the film. You know, it's all over the world now. You need to say your film in 7 minutes. Nobody reads anymore, nothing. You have 7 minutes and then it's crazy. So she told me, and she knew my previous film, and she saw me with the camera. What are you doing? No, you must pitch it. And I told her, Orna, that's her name, I'm going to come next year. I don't have nothing. I don't have a story, I don't have nothing. So she thought, no, you must come. So she really convinced me. And I pitched completely another film. Really. Because I didn't know what's going to happen. And on stage was one very, very important guy for German French TV called Arte. His name is Hans-Robert Eisenhower. He's like the big sheriff in the TV, European TV. When he said something, everybody listened, you know, those kind of a very experienced guy. On stage he said, I want this film. And I was shocked, I was frightened as hell, because I knew I have nothing to sell him. That was, from that moment on, immediately a day after, with him, it took me 2 years to sign a contract and get money from out there. But the real results were that a day after, all the 3 foundation of documentary foundation in Israel called me immediately. They wanted the film. So that was the result, and that suddenly I got money. And later on, it became, you know, bigger and bigger and bigger, and this co-production with, you know, all kind of many people that were involved. And the day came, and I had to show this Hans-Robert Eisenhower the film. And we were arguing, the editor and me, should I tell him before I screen him? It's called rough cut. Rough cut is it's still not a real film, but you can see what it's about, and it was something like 2.5 hours film. But it's a professional procedure. But you can see the film, and you can see it's not the film.
Finished.
Yeah, it's not finished, but it's also not what I told that it was already 3.5 years ago. So we were arguing, and she told me, don't tell him nothing, just screen the film. And she is a very experienced editor. And I told her, I cannot do it. I just cannot do it. It's crazy. So this is something very interesting, by the way, to say. He's based in Germany, I don't know, I think in Bonn, something like that. And you schedule a meeting with this guy that you didn't see at Friday morning, 5 minutes to 10 o'clock. 5 minutes to 10, he knocked on the door and he's entered. But you know, you schedule with the Israelis, which are next door to you. The next, you know, 4 o'clock, Wednesday 4 o'clock, 4:30, they call me, the secretary, we are looking for parking place, wait for us. So he was really precise, he entered, and I told him, Mr. Eisenhower, I must tell you, I must be honest, we're going to see another film. We screen it, and he has his remarks, and he didn't mention nothing about it. So, you know, he has no choice now. He invested the money,
Right.
you know, he must love it. That's it. But afterwards, we went to the lunch, and I asked him, you know, I thought, now it's not official, now tell me. And so he said, no, it's not another film, it's the same film. So, well, don't be ridiculous, you know. And he told me something very interesting. He said, you know, the film you pitched and the film I bought was a film about a family, German family, that live in exile in one flat in Tel Aviv. It's a film about generation gap. It's a film about what can you learn from the stuff people left behind about their life. That's what you pitch, and that's what I got. So I don't know if he was, you know, polite, but I think he was right. Then
Well,
that's how it all developed.
He's probably very pleased now.
Yes.
About the finished and
Yes. He's
In
very
the-
proud of the film.
In the film, your mother expressed or claimed that she wasn't particularly moved by standing at the place where her grandmother lived, and yet seemed disappointed that the plaque wasn't there. Did your family ever pursue that, number one, in getting a plaque? And number two, if you have children, is the fourth generation interested in the stories or learning, or have you made any observations about that?
So for the first question we applied, it's a process, it's a very interesting process. The guy that's making it is an Austrian artist, and it really doesn't cost, I think, in order, it's something like 80-something euros, which, you know, it's for the procedure. And if you are really demanding even without nothing, you know, but there is a line, and he must do every plaque by himself. So, and he's very busy, so it's something that can take maybe 2 years. But
And
we
the
applied.
name is means stumbling block.
Yeah.
In German, it means like something that you would stumble, literally stumble over.
And you know, in Munich, for example, it's not allowed because the head of the Jewish community in Munich, she is really against it, and she said something like, the German wants, you know,
To stomp on it?
To essentially
Stomp on it?
assuage their guilt.
No, the
they
German
want
for the
to
fir-
remove
I-
it, they
yeah.
want to-
No. She said, I don't want that. No one, especially not a German, to once again how do you
Step
say?
on- step on
a name of a Jew.
Jew,
So it's not allowed over there. But in Berlin it's allowed, and I think she's wrong, but never mind. I mean, so this is for the first question. My kids are too young, so I hope, and I'm sure they will see the film. They know it's a process, because my young kid is 4 years old, so it's not
okay.
nothing. And my oldest one, she's 8 years old, so we are telling her, of course, what's the big story is to explain what are the Nazis and this, and it's going with the, you know, with
she's able to understand.
and but I think the main issue is about my mother, and I think that during the film, especially in this scene, and more even in the last scene in the cemetery, she say that she doesn't move, but I don't believe her.
You could tell she
Yeah.
was moved.
Yeah, I think
Some places.
she was trapped by her education, not to express her emotions. But if she wasn't moved, she wouldn't go to the, you know, to look for the grave,
Right.
or she would looking at the suddenly she understands something is missing, but she cannot express it with words. That my explanation on her character is for her character.
There were a lot of cracks in her mask too.
Well, right,
You could
I
see
thought
that
so.
she was holding back very strong emotions. I could see.
Or she was wrestling
She grew
with
up
that.
with one story, and
Right.
then she had to come to terms with a whole different story from what she grew up with, and probably whatever feelings she had about not having asked her parents, and I mean things that we'll never know about whether there were times that she wanted to ask her parents and never did. Or,
When you edited the film, were you aware of the tremendous power, I'm sure you were when you saw it again, of the double takes of your reactions to your mother in your eyes, and they came across on the camera, and it spoke volumes to me. I mean, really, it was amazing the way you kept reacting. Really?
Yeah.
It was continual throughout.
Yeah, because I was shocked.
Almost everybody, you had this look of disbelief, like, come on.
Yeah.
But at times she seemed to be wrestling with her own feelings about why she didn't have feelings about it. I don't think it was just cold that she didn't feel it. You could see a little crack in the armor that she was trying to see why maybe she should or shouldn't and why she didn't, and she was questioning herself, I thought.
I think so also. I think so also.
And I think she was genuinely disappointed not to see the plaque in the sidewalk in front of Susanna's apartment.
I think she you know, somehow, because she didn't ask questions, she sort of kind of believed everything is settled. You know, everything is organized, and she really trusted her parents with you know, very, you know, especially my grandmother was very beautiful, and she got a lot of humor, and she was, when she walked on the street, everybody looked at her. She was beautiful, you know, but my grandfather, he was a really brilliant man, really, and it was very, everybody knew it, he had, you know, and I think she somehow trusted, you know, as many of us have this trust with our parents. It's something very natural. Suddenly to find these cracks and this, oops, no. Why didn't you care for this plaque, for example? My grandmother, why did she? And she said that sometimes it's hard to see all those details, but when we walk on the graveyard, she's asking me, why didn't my mother put the name of her mother on her gravestone? It's very common in Israel that when you, especially if your mother, she was a victim in the Holocaust, you see it in the cemeteries that people write, she is the daughter of that was killed in the Holocaust. People do it. Why didn't she? But so we didn't put it in the film, but I answer her, well, she didn't tell you it through all her life. You wanted to, she would write it on the, I mean, but it really shocked her, all those discoveries.
And I'm sure the question will never be answered. Why did they hide some things? Why did they not? And so there's just all those questions that will probably never be answered. But I think in most of our lives, we can all look at parts of our families that is exactly the case. And it's just so interesting to see it play out on film, obviously with a very difficult and challenging subject matter in many ways, but it's just so human too, and I find that really fascinating as well. I don't know if everybody else feels that way, but it just feels so human in very many ways. We were talking on the way over here about the displacement of people, and I think you brought it up before a lot of folks came in, that even here in the United States, for different reasons, that those displaced people wanted to assimilate as Americans very quickly and wanted their children to do that as well, and you didn't hear the stories about the old country or otherwise. And it's just really, it's very human and very interesting.
I would comment about the human point of view, because that was, of course, my aim in filmmaking at all. That's what my interest is, how to say, to research the human nature or whatever. That's what, of course, it's a film about Nazis, but it's only it's only the first layer of the film. But when I start making the film, you know, I was myself full of preconcept and stereotype about, of course, about Nazis, for example. Somebody asked me, why didn't they trial him. You know, all things
Right.
that I can answer that, but no, I have lots of concepts, preconcept and stereotype. Nazis are bad, and they hate Jews, and Jews with, all these things, one after another, broken. I had to rearrange my
Your own
perception,
perspective.
my own perspective. So, and the one thing I could tell, of course I knew it, but when you're making a film, you need to think and rethink and rephrase your thought. So I think that what you see in this film, especially about my grandparents and from Millerstein, that people are built out of many voices, many contradictions, and that's what makes this story human, because you see the different, also as Professor Witt said, on the one hand it's crazy. On the one hand, this guy is going to the office and thinking what's to do with the Jewish people, and then later on he goes with one Jew to a concert. How can you combine?
Divide your brain that way, right.
But this is human. It's not so good, but that's how we are doing it. And I think also about, this is part of the explanation of the behavior of my grandparents, and I think that this is what this was one of my aim in presenting the characters in the film that way, because I believe this is the right way. We are full of contradictions. On the one hand, and for example, something very simple, but I don't know if you get its nuance, but my grandfather, he was a real Zionist. That means that his ideology was that the Jewish people must be settled with their own country in Palestine. On the other hand, he was a German patriot. That means he fought.
Yeah, he had his own paradox.
Yeah, so that's another paradox, but it's natural. Yeah.
Do you think it's possible that their friendship, like he saw your grandfather as a person above any nationality or culture or religion? That's what I want to believe, is that that's how he could divide his brain. It's his friend. So, and it didn't matter what his background was.
You mean between my grandfather and von Millerstein? Or
Yes,
what?
yes.
That their
And their
relationship
friendship,
was
it
above
was
their religions,
much higher
above their
ideologies.
nationalities.
Yeah,
That
I
was
think
on a different plane.
I think they were friends. First of all, they were friends. They like each other. Sometimes, you think about your friends. Sometimes you like friends that, suddenly sometimes you discover.
You don't care for their politics or...
That's right. That's exactly it.
And do you think it might have been safer for your grandparents to know them? Was it?
And this, I'm not sure, safer in the way that, hold on a second. There is something I must explain, historical point. There is until 36 and after. Until 1936, there is no question that my grandfather knew exactly what von Millerstein is doing. I have documents of that. I'm very sure about it. Not just this, they were meeting. I don't want to use the word cooperation because it's you need to be very careful with that. But there is, at the beginning of the film, when I'm going the first time to this professor in the north, in the kibbutz in the north of Israel, he explaining to me that there was a very unique time in history that the Nazis, they wanted to get rid of the Jews, and the Zionists wanted to take them. So there was a very surrealistic time in history that nobody, just recently historians start to talk about it, that the Zionists and Nazis showed the same aim. Of course, not in the same meaning,
Right.
No Zionists wanted to kill a Jew, But they were, so there is a whole discussion about it between historians, because there are some kind of evidence that the Nazis, first of all, another stereotype of mine, I was sure, the Nazis came to power, they wanted to kill the Jews. It's not true. The Nazis came to power, they have many troubles, not just with Jews. the first they sent to concentration camps were homosexuals and communists, much before the Jews. And the SS, in the beginning of this institution, didn't really know what to do with the Jews. They were not expert for Jews. This is why they took von Millenstein, because he wrote a little bit about Jews. They thought he's an expert, and they put in it. This is how it happened. This is very strange. He really educated Eichmann. Of course, Eichmann took over and on completely extreme direction. But when you read, for example, the Eichmann interrogation or even biography, he started to read Zionist material. It's shaking when you read it. He read, and something very that I thought about, very, very weird. Because many of the books that he's mentioned, I read as a youngster, sometimes in school, but I read them in Hebrew, because I don't know. But they were written in German, originally, because and he read the original. Eichmann read the original, I didn't, it's crazy. So, anyhow, yeah, the history is completely surrealistic. So, for sure, and my grandfather was not the only Zionist that was encountering SS and Nazis officer. And there was some accusation and some deal with this subject that some historian claim that there was a period that the Nazis gave better condition to Zionists. And it's a whole, but anyhow, we're talking about 2-3 years period, and that was over. And another thing to explain, the German Jews were the most assimilated Jews all around Europe, and maybe the world, except America, that's another story, but in Europe. So they felt, first of all, Germans. They didn't, and my grandfather, he was a judge. And he was a government officer, or how do you call it? He was paid by
worked for the government.
He worked for the government. He was like, So all those German Jews, before Hitler came to power, were completely not Zionist, because for them to leave Germany was something unbelievable.
They were Germans.
Yeah, they were Germans.
Right.
So back to the story. This is for sure that until 1936, when the end of 1936, my grandparents are leaving Germany. My grandfather knew not 100%, but he knew who he's dealing with. Let's say like that. And I dealt a lot with the question, how much von Millenstein influenced him to leave the country. It's an open question, and I believe it. I believe it. That he told, because there is a very interesting point here. At the end of 1936, my grandparents leave Germany, but 1 or 2 months before, von Millenstein is leaving the Judenreferat, and you see it on his CV. So at that time, my grandparents are going to Israel, von Millenstein is leaving the SD, and now they are meeting each other at least 10 years afterwards. More than 10 years. I think they first met in the 50s or in 1950s. So, of course, they were changing letters, but he could tell them whatever he wants, And when they are coming back, I'm sure he didn't tell them, guys, I was later on with Goebbels and that and that. He told what he told his daughter and etc. And they decide to believe him. The question why, but they decided to believe him. And so I think the opposite. I think that until 36 it was good for them, that I'm sure that they have connection.
Someone on the inside.
Yeah.
Right.
But after that it was the opposite. I think it was good for them that they knew somebody that leave it all behind. That became, a good German, as he said, or he was Nazi, but he understood it's not good. They could tell the story to themselves. That's what I think.